Today, see how Tanium powers ServiceNow solutions. Welcome back to Tanium Tech Talks. I'm your host, Ashley McGlone. Now, if this is your first time watching Tanium Tech Talks, welcome to this very special episode. But on this show, maybe you have watched before, you've seen lots of ServiceNow integration demos, but what we didn't have was that big picture overview story to show you all the things to help you get oriented to what's possible with these two legendary platforms. So this is part one of a very special two-part crossover series with the crew from ServiceNow and their Beers with Engineers show. So part two is going to be featured on their YouTube series, and we're going to tell you how to join us live over there. So watch to the end of the show for details. But today what we're going to cover is all the connections between ServiceNow and Tanium at the high level, and so you can get the most out of your technology stack. Now, this show is going to be different in a few ways. I've never had this many guests on the show. It's a crossover, and things just might get a little crazy. We don't know. So I've got a lot of people I want to intro to you today on this special episode. So we're going to start with our guys from ServiceNow. Mike and Will, please introduce yourself for our audience.
Hi, my name is Mike Gallagher. I am an IT operations management pre-sales specialist, which basically just means that I'm a technology nerd who loves to solve problems with technology and ServiceNow. I am strangely going on almost 3 decades in technology, and I lovingly joke that if it has a 1 or a 0 in it, I've probably managed it at some point in my career. So I've been in a lot of different trenches throughout my career, and so I get really excited and passionate to talk about IT operations management because it would have solved a lot of problems in various trenches. Will, over to you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Will Hallam. I'm a solution consultant at ServiceNow, focusing on IT operations management. I actually, similar to Mike, came from an IT practitioner background and came to ServiceNow because I was able to make my life so much easier using the platform. I decided I was just going to go and work with them.
Well, thanks, guys. Now let's over to the Tanium side. Brandon, Jeremy, and Steven.
I will kick it off for us. Brandon Wolf here, Senior Director of Strategic Partnerships here at Tanium. I basically help coordinate between our collective efforts at Tanium and ServiceNow across marketing, sales, enablement, our customers. We have a really, really deep intertwined partnership and kind of sit in the middle, helping make sure that everybody's speaking the same language and talking the same talk.
Hey team, my name is Jeremy Knudsen, former ServiceNow, joining Tanium as the ServiceNow architect. Mike Gallagher, good to see you. I think it's going on, 20 years of us working together in the technology industry. So such a pleasure. And Ashley, thank you for hosting us. I'm absolutely excited to see what the topics of this and the dialogue comes out of with this interaction. So pleasure to meet you all. Jeremy Knudsen here. Mr. Stephen Payne.
Yeah, hello everybody. Stephen Payne. I'm also a ServiceNow solution architect with Tanium, previous ServiceNow employee as well, with over 25 years of security experience. So I'm here to help our sales teams and our solution engineers evangelize the partnership that we have with ServiceNow and just how we promote the overall collaboration and the better together stories that we have across our platforms.
Boy, we have a deep bench today on this call. Thank you all for joining us. And this is going to be a good show. We've been planning this for a while, and I'm really looking forward. We did not stage any of this dialogue. I'm really looking forward to what happens. So let's start off. Mike and Will, tell us a little bit about Beers with Engineers. Great show name. What do you guys do over there?
It's kind of an interesting story. Will and I recognized that there was not a lot of content around cloud native capabilities and how it worked within the ServiceNow ecosystem. In addition to that, we really felt like, hey, there's not enough community bringing, frankly, the ServiceNow nerds together to nerd out, right? And so effectively, that's what we did. We built Beers with Engineers to talk about the intersection of ServiceNow and cloud native functionality, and where we can get really, really deep, really, really technical and talk together as a community about what's working, what's not working, how can we make things better. And of course, with a name like Beers with Engineers, we have to drink beers. So today I'm actually drinking the home beer of my state. It's the Coors Banquet Edition, right? The champagne of beers, because I live in Denver, Colorado. So here's to that. Will, what are you drinking today?
Today I'll be enjoying a Brooklyn Brewery Summer Ale, which is a fine, refreshing beverage. And, just to kind of reiterate what Mike said, it's really our show is about kind of bringing together that community who's all kind of at different points in their journey with cloud native and ServiceNow, and just having conversations with them. And we usually, bring at least, one kind of fairly deep technical topic, but it's really just meant to fuel the conversation. And sometimes we do it live, so sometimes it gets a little non-linear, but we always have lots of interesting conversations. We've been lucky enough to have a live event for the past 3 knowledge conferences at ServiceNow. And so that also has been super rewarding to just get in there and talk kind of deep tech stuff with our customers.
Well, we'll do a virtual toast here. Just tipping the bottle. I have a Kentucky Bourbon Barrel Vanilla Cream Ale from Lexington, Kentucky. They've got a whole series of these ales. They're really good. I am not popping the top, but I'm on keto right now, and I don't want to lose the progress I've been working really hard on. But thank you guys for bringing your show here to us. So a hearty welcome to all of you who are joining us from the Beers with Engineers side of the house. So Mike and Will are here to give us their engineers' take on Tanium today as we talk about it. So before we kick over to the Tanium crew, though, I want to give you a quick overview of what is Tanium in case you're coming in first time to the show and maybe you've never heard of Tanium or you've not seen it. So first off, really quick, what is Tanium? It's a real-time endpoint management platform for Windows, Mac OS, Linux, workstation, server, anywhere in the world. You've got an IP address, cloud native, like they said. Customers love the blazing fast search interface to get any data from any endpoint anywhere. And on top of that, we've built use cases for everything you can imagine in IT ops and security. And if we just take a quick look at the console here, I'm going to just type in, this is like a search bar, right? So let's just type in operating system. I can get operating system from all machines. I could also just type, say, how many Windows 10 machines do I have left in my environment? And the AI search bar will just parse that out and bring the results back automatically in the right syntax. But look at these quick results, right? So I can just sort by my OSs and I can scroll down and see, okay, how many Windows 10 do I still have running around? And I can, drill down on this data, take action on this data. And it's not fair to just show you that quick little teaser, but that's all we've got time for today. So check out these quick results against thousands of machines. You saw how fast that came up, right? Well, imagine that across hundreds of thousands of machines with the same blazing speed. It's crazy. So like everything else in the world of large language models and AI, you need a robust data source. So imagine all the endpoints in your environment like a real-time database to drive all your automation needs. And we call that autonomous endpoint management. So what if I could have self-driving infrastructure? I mean, we've released several capabilities so far, with more to come. So for example, imagine software deployments that automatically flow through your release rings based on criticality, whether the software install was successful, and even live telemetry showing if that software install caused issues with CPU or memory that could automatically pause the deployment. Those are some of the things that we're working on and releasing here at Tanium. So just like our ServiceNow friends, it's hard to describe all this in 30 seconds. So that's why you've got this whole playlist here on the Tanium YouTube channel for Tanium Tech Talks. Lots of demos of our capabilities there. So that's an overview of what is Tanium. So I'd like to go over to Steven and Jeremy for a second. You guys have some slides that'll just help us tie together very quickly.
Right.
What is the big picture story?
Thank you so much, Ashley, and a fantastic introduction and a really good entry point from the Tanium perspective. But if we think about something in a construct of eyes, brains, hands, That data that you just saw coming in from Tanium is really going to be fed into the workflows of ServiceNow. So orchestrated across the configuration management database, things that Mike and will also be talking about. But then the hands, the action, and that complete visibility to orchestrate with quality real-time data into one ecosystem, also known as, we like to call it and coin it, the golden configuration item. So multiple data sources can feed inside of ServiceNow, the brains. The hands and the orchestration and the action and the eyes are also the visibility that Tanium is providing on that. And so in doing so, we look traditionally at an asset lifecycle. And I'll use this, and it could be vulnerability, risk, and security, but as well from an asset lifecycle perspective, we look at things like rhythms. Someone requests an item. That asset is approved, it's acquired, it's received. We're now associating inside of the brains, ServiceNow, the warranties, the contracts, the entitlements, the assets now are deployed, discovered, and inventoried. We're finding things that often customers don't see with the Tanium feeding into ServiceNow, with the Tanium agent feeding that into ServiceNow to help create a solid data foundation. Now, where that comes into play for ServiceNow is mapping those assets, respective assets to infrastructure, business services, streamlining and prioritizing those business applications and those assets so that then from a service management AI construct, we're able to predict, prevent, and then further automate AEM and Now Assist and Pro Plus, all of those components that also rear their head to fix those issues in advance of when they're happening, creating a better user experience, a digital experience. But then also, now that we have that visibility, assessing those threats and those attacks and those weaknesses. So the perimeter is now covered, but also we're continuously monitoring and continuously preventing through the full life cycle of an asset. So you're seeing how we're bringing a lot of this together to improve controls, remediation, governance, process, and also the life cycle aspects of assets as they are manifested inside of the ServiceNow ecosystem, and then properly decommissioning, and then following that full life cycle back to its dovetail end. But Stephen, anything on your point from a phased approach to achieving the success with Tanium and ServiceNow together?
Yeah, Jeremy, thanks for sharing and going through that, because that really leads into a phased approach to success in order to realize the value that our customers are looking for. And it's really underpinned by all of the Tanium autonomous endpoint management that we're doing with ServiceNow agentic AI. And you can see this kind of looks like an implementation roadmap. In a way, it kind of is, but at every step of this journey, customers are going to be at different phases, and that's okay. But I want you to know that the implementation isn't an all or nothing type of approach. We do recommend and take a phased approach to a structured and scalable manner. And a lot of that starts with that endpoint visibility that Tanium is known for in being able to manage the overall life cycle of an asset, whether it's hardware or software. So it starts with that inventory and visibility, and then you can start layering on things like detecting and prioritizing risk, remediating those risks in real time, threats that you see from your environment, and then moving into that continuous monitoring. And eventually, hopefully, this roadmap kind of supports how teams can progressively develop their capabilities around AI and automation. And one way that we can do that is through our integrations that we have within Tanium into ServiceNow. And so what you're looking at here is really a Tanium and ServiceNow solution alignment. And this solution map really is what it's doing is illustrating the alignment of various components towards a very common objective. And that's detailing how Tanium and ServiceNow solutions integrate across all of these different capabilities, whether it's IT operations, security operations, risk management. And this includes things like service management and IT ops and asset management, all supporting IT security and risk services across your organization. So in this sense, Tanium is providing real-time accurate data, which ServiceNow utilizes through their workflows or tickets, their approvals, eventually getting to a fully autonomous state in certain use cases. So the collaboration between these platforms really supports not only the business continuity across your organization, but also delivering operational effectiveness.
Boy, this is a great overview, guys. I tell you, that big. I love diagrams like this. I'm a very visual person, and that really helps me understand and wrap my head around it. And obviously, there's a lot here. Brandon, could you take us into the Tanium console and show us kind of what these integrations look like from the Tanium side, and then also show folks what the ServiceNow store interface looks like with all the Tanium options?
Yeah. So what I wanted to really highlight here is there's a new area of the Tanium console that we recently rolled out that we call the integrations gallery. And this is kind of the one-stop shop inside of Tanium to understand what integrations is Tanium building to other platforms. And really one of our biggest ones here is ServiceNow. And so if you're a Tanium customer and you want to understand, what are all these integrations? How do I actually get more information around these? If you go into the integrations gallery inside of Tanium, what we can come down here is we can see all the different integrations that are available. Things like Microsoft and ScreenMeet and some of our other partners. But let's just jump into one of our ServiceNow integrations. So we're going to go into ITX, which is our integrations focused on IT asset management, operations management, service management. Within here, one, we can get a link that's actually going to go out, and this link would show us kind of a detailed page of all the integrations with demo videos and solution briefs, anything that you might want to see just to better understand our relationship. But we can also go in here to each of the individual integrations that make up this solution. And within each of these integrations, you're going to get a description of what does this integration do? What is the value for me as a customer? And where can I go to actually install this integration? And I preface this by saying, today, what this is going to do is it's going to bring you to the ServiceNow store. What we're working on, though, is making this a bit more contained. And so rather than having to navigate between multiple pages, getting to a point where if you want this integration from within the Tanium console, being able to actually go through the configuration and understand what's available to me and what are the steps to get this in my ServiceNow environment. But let's just go ahead and jump right into the ServiceNow store. So if we go to the ServiceNow store, and anybody who's a ServiceNow customer has likely seen this page before, what I've done is I've just searched for Tanium, and this is going to bring me things like Tanium solutions that some of our partners have developed. It's also going to bring up our newest Tanium AEM agent, our AI agent for the ServiceNow agentic AI platform. And it's going to bring all of the individual integrations that Tanium has developed for ServiceNow. And I want to emphasize that the reason there are so many integrations here is because sometimes there are license implications on either the Tanium or ServiceNow side. So we didn't want to build a one-size-fits-all everything integration. If you have specific areas that you're focused around security operations or vulnerability response or software asset management, you can go right to that specific area. And if we jump into one of these store pages, this is ServiceNow's brand new store UI that they recently rolled out. You're going to get all the information such as the screenshots. You're going to actually be able to install this directly in your environment. You can come down here and understand what are the license implications. And one thing that I really quickly wanted to highlight on here, if you go to any of our integrations and you look at the pricing, you're going to see this beautiful green free bubble. As I had said previously, there are sometimes license implications in order to leverage our integrations inside of the ServiceNow platform, but all of our integrations are developed for free for our customers. And that's really important to us, that if you are a Tanium customer and you are a ServiceNow customer, the integrations to bring Tanium's data and our actions into the platform are free to use.
That's fantastic. And also there's a documentation link right there. You can also go to help.tanium.com, and we got Tech Talk video walkthroughs here on how to set these things up. So thank you, Brandon, Jeremy, Stephen, for getting us kind of read in the big picture. Again, that's a lot of stuff that we're mashing together in these solutions. A lot of API calls going back and forth. So thanks for those overviews. So now I'd like to pivot over to Mike and Will from the ServiceNow side. I'm really curious, what have you guys heard about from that side of things when people wire up Tanium and ServiceNow together? What are you seeing on your side?
Well, so a big thing for me is that the only thing worse than having no CMDB is having a CMDB that is stale, out of date, or inaccurate, right? And so by integrating with Tanium and getting that near real-time data feed of all of your endpoint data, that is massively useful for organizations who have a need to manage the CMDB and have that near real-time data, especially as we start thinking about agentic AI and autonomous responses, right? Like you can't turn loose an agent to go and fix a problem when it's targeting the wrong thing because the CMDB is out of date, right? Like that's a big concern. So having that near real-time feed of data from Tanium into the ServiceNow CMDB is a massive win for most customers. Will, I'm curious your thoughts.
Absolutely. The other thing that I think really needs to be more heavily socialized within our circles is the use cases around automation and orchestration, and tying that into things like change management, incident and alert management, because just kind of, and maybe this is because so like ServiceNow, we've got this, we're kind of stuck with this perception in a lot of communities still that we're a ticketing tool. And it's all because when Fred Luddy created the platform, he created this platform. It was like a big Lego set, could do like anything within IT, right? And he tried to show this to people and they're like, but what does it do? And he's like, well, it'll do anything. Well, for example, what? So then he built a ticketing system on the platform. And all of a sudden it's like, hey, look at this great ticketing system. I kind of think in at least in like the IT operations management circles at ServiceNow, perhaps Tanium is thought of as a very solidly kind of security rooted tool, because that's where I have heard about it mostly, is talking to my ServiceNow SecOps SCs, because it's a very popular tool to integrate our various SecOps solutions with. And I think we need to kind of socialize more the opportunity where if you've got all these Tanium agents out there, they are, like Jeremy said, they are the hands that can implement whatever you want to automate. I think, in fact, I watched one of the Tech Talk videos where you've got some capability where you've got kind of these primitive functions where if you want to create an automation within ServiceNow, you've got kind of pre-canned API calls into Tanium to kick off various activities on the Tanium side, right? And I was like, I'd never heard of this before. And I think a lot of other people at ServiceNow are in the same boat. And I think that's a real good opportunity to kind of get people aware. You don't have to mess around with SSH credentials and Windows admin rights and all the other stuff that we get a lot of pushback from. If there's already Tanium agents out there, we can just piggyback on that, and customers can be automating the heck out of all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, the Lego set analogy never gets old. I mean, it's like, okay, I'm one of those purist kids that like you don't mix the sets, right? But if you've got the let's say the Marvel expansion set over here, right, and the Harry Potter expansion set over here, is like now all of a sudden these people can be in the same script together. Oh wow, in your bedroom playing with your Legos, right? So now you've got this where no, wait a minute, we've got the brain of ServiceNow, and then the eyes of Tanium with all that visibility, seeing, bring it in the CMDB, and then the hands taking action. So Tanium guys, what are you seeing with customers, what they're doing with that?
I was going to add in here, like just add some Craggle to it, if you know what Craggle is by any measure. So, it's like, oh, you can't mix the two sets together. One of the things that I'm seeing, and this kind of comes also not only from a Tanium aspect team, but it comes from the ServiceNow back end side. Now, Mike, from an ITOM perspective, and Will, from an ITOM perspective, it's could be Kubernetes, cloud-based ephemeral environments. I mean, there's a whole host of other things that aren't technically endpoints. So this is where I've seen the understanding and combination of IT operations management, being able to discover visibility and do service mapping is critical, but also the visibility to the assets below. To your point, Will, was okay, ServiceNow is a ticketing system. We're all familiar with that. Tanium's a security system. This is what I find interesting, is that it's kind of an old telltale analogy or a joke, which is the CIO asks the CISO, hey, how secure is our environment? And the CISO says, give me all the assets and I'll tell you, right? So it kind of becomes, and it's not saying that that's bad, but it becomes that visibility layer back to what Stephen was mentioning earlier. But hopefully that makes sense. Stephen or Brandon, anything else you would add to that from what we see?
Yeah, I would just add that I think the evolution of ServiceNow has really been the evolution of every enterprise. And what I mean by that is ServiceNow really started off as this IT centric. People thought of a ticketing system and they thought of IT operations, and maybe it starts to blend into security operations. But you look at ServiceNow now and it's HR, it's customer success, it's field service, it's legal, it's public service, and it is really the enterprise. And I think that IT more and more, previously was kind of thought of as this function. You have IT, and oftentimes they're really under-resourced. IT is now the backbone of everything. Every department and every employee relies on IT in the backbone. And so I think as you start to orchestrate all these different processes and teams, the ability to actually see information across the enterprise is more and more critical, and these risks just get magnified. We see how these attacks happen within organizations, or where risk comes in, financial and reputational risk. And I think IT is no longer just this side piece. It truly is fundamental to every part of an enterprise. So having that complete visibility across every function within the enterprise and being able to actually orchestrate workflows that go across all these different teams that maybe aren't using the same tools, maybe aren't even working off the same platforms. That's becoming a big problem for organizations. You really have this consolidation of platform to platform, which I think is really resonating for our customers when they look at Tanium and ServiceNow. It's how do we get rid of these 50 different tools that our teams aren't able to communicate with each other, and there's disparities between the data, and how do we move to something where everybody is talking the same language and we can all see the same data in the same way. And so I think that's been something really, really interesting with our customers, is just how much that visibility and orchestration between these teams that maybe aren't even working out of the same country, let alone out of the same office, but being able to effectively communicate in real time and see the same things and see the same results. It is something that's been really, really interesting to see with our customers.
Yeah, just to add on to that a little bit, the analogy that I use is that ServiceNow is a Swiss Army knife that's like a mile wide, right? And I get to like focus in on one or two blades in it, right? And having all of that all connected together with that single data model is phenomenal, right? But ultimately, I know it's blasphemy, but no matter how big you make the platform, it literally cannot do everything for an enterprise. So there's always going to be integration points, and there's always going to be how do we ingest data into the system. And I had a conversation with a customer just yesterday where I said, every other system where you have to either build or develop or manage some integration between ServiceNow and that platform is going to result in technical debt that you and your teams have to manage and carry for years, right? And so what I love about where we've developed this ServiceNow and Tanium like connectivity is that we as companies are building and maintaining those integrations and doing so in an intelligent data model centric way that takes the technical debt away from the customers, so that way they can go focus on their primary business models, right? So I think that's a huge benefit to how we've developed this process.
100%.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because it's, sometimes we think about open source, and we have a lot of creative customers that do some amazing content, some of our own field engineers that do some amazing content. But to say that these solutions that you see in the ServiceNow store were written by Tanium engineering, so we know that they work and they've been vetted and tested and versioned and they're supported, which is really a great story.
And to add on to that, it's been developed by Tanium, but vetted by ServiceNow, and ensuring that. So ServiceNow has this concept of the common service data model, which is really like, how do we expect things to have relationships between each other? And it's a really big, heady concept. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's all about does the data that we expect live in the platform in the right place and have the right connectivity to all of the other things that we expect? And so the fact that the Tanium integrations are designed from the ground up to follow the common service data model and ensure that the data lands within the ServiceNow platform in the right place means that customers don't have to spend a bunch of time smashing that stuff around into the right places.
And I think the one thing I would add on to what Mike just said is, getting the data into the right place is an endeavor for a lot of organizations. And then it's, well, how do we maintain it in the right place? And so this whole common services data model, not only from the get-go, let's make sure that the data on day one is going where ServiceNow expects it. But think about the process that every organization goes through when there's an upgrade to ServiceNow and you've got to move to the next version, or there's new capabilities that are introduced. When we develop these integrations and our engineering teams work together constantly. That's something that I love about this partnership is that we're constantly working together to understand what are you developing so that we can prepare for it in the right way. When you think about an upgrade, you just want an upgrade to work. You want day one, after your system has been upgraded and you're on the latest version, you don't want to have to go back and redo customizations and figure out what is broken now. That confidence for organizations to be able to say, this works today and it's going to work tomorrow, I think is huge because as we're all aware, there are many places that customizations break down. And that's something that's very, very difficult, especially if the person who did the customization is no longer with an organization and it wasn't documented, which never happens to any of our customers, I'm sure, but I've heard anecdotes about this before. And I think our ability to just talk the same language, put things in the right place, and work out of the box without customization is something that is just huge. And I can't emphasize enough that upgrade compatibility and the configuration, not customization. And that's something that we've been extremely conscientious on both sides about.
Yeah, I can remember earlier in my IT career seeing entire floors of staff dedicated to maintaining a software solution in the enterprise, and paying like not ridiculous prices for the software and then ridiculous prices for professional services with a whole floor of people dedicated to maintaining that application. And that's not what we've got here. I mean, you've got two legendary platforms. And literally with the demo that Brandon did on the show last year, it's like, give me 30 minutes and we've got your asset data flowing already. That's just completely unheard of in IT.
Mm-hmm. Quick side note joke that the customization that only one dude knows about and has never really documented, I call that truck sensitivity, right? Like that dude gets hit by a truck, your whole system's falling over.
Nice.
Yeah. So Will and Mike, what questions do you have for the Tanium guys today?
Actually, can you bring up the capability slide again? Because there's a couple of like things
Yeah.
on that slide that I want to dig in on.
Happy to do so. Okay.
So so first of all, for me, not coming into this discussion process as with a lot of Tanium knowledge, this slide completely opened my eyes to the level of connectivity between the two platforms and where we've kind of built these great connection points to help kind of like fill gaps, right? So one of the things that I didn't really understand is like, not my area of expertise, but the Tanium patch management for security operations. As soon as I heard about that, that blew my mind because that is a thing that customers come to me all the time. Hey, how are other customers managing the patching process within the ServiceNow platform? Doesn't your IT operations management suite handle that? It's like, dirty little secret. The answer is no, right? And so, so then we got to go, okay, well, how do you integrate with other systems? So talk to me a little bit about that Tanium patch management.
Yeah. So, Mike, as you can tell across the top there, the solutions that we have are kind of put in three core capabilities, ITX, ITOps, SecOps, and IRM. And the key thing about the patch orchestration for vulnerability response is that you can, as you pull in the assets from Tanium, you're also with the comply module being able to identify vulnerabilities on those assets as they're related to CVEs. What we don't know and where we rely on ServiceNow is the criticality of that asset. What are the underlying business services that are supporting? And if you know that information, then you can start prioritizing how you want to move forward with remediating those vulnerabilities and patching those systems. The other thing that Tanium does is we also pull in not only that CVE information, but also the applicable patches that are going to be used to remediate those vulnerabilities. And we can do that all from the ServiceNow console through the Vulnerability Manager workspace. And we're also leveraging other parts of the ServiceNow platform like change management. So if you want to remediate a vulnerability, we recommend going through the change management process in ServiceNow. And within that process, you have the ability to request a particular patch from Tanium to be deployed to those assets to remediate that vulnerability. And you never have to leave the ServiceNow console. It's with that direct integration, you're managing that full life cycle through ServiceNow, and Tanium is automating those deployments. And then you can see the success or failures, the results of that, and validate that those vulnerabilities are actually indeed remediated.
You just described eyes, brains, hands perfectly, Stephen.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a great example of that analogy. I got a question. So it seems pretty clear that Tanium has a very powerful and flexible agent-based architecture. Can you give me a flavor of how the conversations with customers go and we kind of run into this ourselves with some of our solutions where they're like, I do not trust that this thing is not going to crowbar my systems. How do I have control over what this powerful agent can and can't do? How do I have visibility into what it is doing? That kind of theme. How do those conversations go with you guys?
Yeah, I can take that one from being a former platforms me. So there's a couple different ways to answer that. First off, people look to Tanium for agent consolidation on their endpoints. Instead of needing a dozen agents, you can roll it into one agent. And
Yep.
And I used to talk about like Star Wars Battlefront 2, like, okay, we got my DLC. Once I install the base game, I got my DLC, right? That's what Tanium does. So you just download all these different roles that the agent will perform. But the beauty of it is this: you get a throttle for that agent to make sure it doesn't crush the user experience. Right. So that's one way that we kind of do that. So you add to that, we always get this objection. It's like, hey, wait a minute, you could destroy the whole place. Well, yeah, but there's RBAC, right? And so you are, as a system administrator, with any solution in the world that's going to administer all your endpoints, you've got to have remote or role-based access control, and we've got episodes and all that stuff here too, where you can then delegate appropriate permissions. And I know you guys have the same thing in ServiceNow, where you can delegate RBAC and roles and all that. So we do the same thing on the Tanium side.
But also instead of the crowbar scenario, I guess, and Will and Mike, the architecture and the intellectual property behind the linear chain, just the way the architecture of Tanium operates, non-traditional hub and spoke. So therefore, it's compounding against the network efficiency that you have. Mike, we worked in networking, 18, 20 years ago together, right? Your network teams would often say, oh, you're going to bring down the network. Well, actually, I'm actually just speaking to the one next to me. So I like to call that the hive mentality. So it's not coming in traditionally putting a load on a schedule by any measure. That could also be applied in conjunction, and it must be, but it's saying all this other ancillary real-time component that's being fed is what we at Tanium call linear chain, which is the speed and efficiency of that hive mentality. I hate to say it, and you could edit this out if you want to, but like a BitTorrent mentality to that degree, right?
Peer-to-peer.
So,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
does that make sense, Will? Does that help address it? And actually, if I said anything silly, please correct me. But I mean, analogies, I think, rule the roost for what people are associated with, right?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense from it's going to kill the network perspective. And
Yeah.
Yeah, so we are coming down to the wire here. We've got to wrap up in just a minute. I'm gonna just say like last rounds is the way we say it here. Just like a one line you want to make sure people understand as a takeaway from today. Just jump in.
the brain, eyes, hands thing, I think that's really the mantra, right? Is, if we go into a customer shop and they've got Tanium, it's like you can jumpstart automating all kinds of workflows.
I'll go with platform consolidation. I think as organizations are looking at more complexity, and the complexity is not going to reduce. Things are going to keep getting more complex. The amount of things that you have to manage gets really, really difficult. And I think having the ability to actually look at these platforms that do so many things, but require so much little integration and require so much less customization. That's really how I think a lot of organizations are going to achieve success, is being able to manage the growing complexity in better ways.
Yeah, my belief is that unless software development is your core business model, you should not be doing software development, right? So don't spend time trying to write custom integrations to ingest all of this data from 8 different systems and try and reconcile it all down into this database and then feed it from that database into the CMDB, right? We have done that work. Between ServiceNow and Tanium, we have done the vast majority of that work on your behalf, so take advantage of it.
Yeah, I'll add on to that, Mike. My takeaway here is building relationships. Get to know your peers at ServiceNow. Get to know your peers at Tanium. Work together. Develop a solution. At the end of the day, your customers are going to be the winners.
I'm going to use a quote from A.A. Milne. If anybody knows A.A. Milne. Winnie the Pooh.
Winnie the Pooh.
Yep.
Put on your big boy boots, big girl boots, and get ready for an adventure. That's what I'm going to leave you with.
Ready for an adventure. It's funny. There's a common theme that kind of was laced under all this. Was back in my day, we were all kind of saying that, right? And it's so much better now with these two platforms coming together. So guys, this has been a ton of fun, and I hope you as the audience have enjoyed this as well. So big thanks to all of our guests on this part 1 experience today. Now, in the show notes below, you'll find a link to register for the August live recording of ServiceNow Beers with Engineers over on their channel. So, Mike and Will, could you give us a quick commercial? What is our audience going to expect on that show in August?
So we're going to deep dive in on a particular integration with Tanium. We'll have it's a very loose agenda. It's very unstructured, right? We try and keep it to 5 slides or less. And then we get into the technology. We deep dive in on a specific area of the technology, and then we open it up for questions for people to get as deep and technical as they want to. And for those of you who have joined us in the past, we actually stop recording at about the 55 to an hour mark. And then we just open it up for another half an hour for people to just ask questions and talk about, build that community together. So that's the extra bonus of coming and joining us live. That never makes it onto the YouTube recordings. So come join us live. Enjoy the camaraderie, right, with the other ServiceNow and Tanium folks. And then, get to see part 2 of this session. So really looking forward to it.
Well, thanks so much for coming on the show to get all of you today. And so for those of you who are watching, what are you waiting for? Go register right now. You have to sign up so you can get this special link sent to your email. Put that on your calendar. That link is in the show notes below. Go sign up. And then for that deep dive, bring your questions and bring your brews. All right. So also in the show notes below, you're going to find a link to their YouTube channel, all their other content they've got out there for you to take advantage of, and the Tanium Tech Talk videos that we've referenced today that do walkthroughs on all of these ServiceNow integrations. So that's it for today. Thank you for joining us. And until next time, go Tanium.
So let me give you a topic. who has less hair on this?
I think me and Brandon are right out.
I think Will's pretty close there because I've got more on the chin. So yeah, I think Will's going to take that one. Yeah. Steve's got a nice beard over there, but yeah, but this is fun. Yeah, Jeremy, thanks for hooking us all up like this. And I'm really looking forward to the next one.